So today is August 15th, 2018. It's Wednesday. Sitting here with Jackie Massey. Mr. Massey is running for mayor. He has work clothes on right now, so you're just going to see me. But he's going to verify for me all the great progressive planks that he's got on his platform. First, though, he wanted to talk about politics. So you wanted to say something about partisan politics. We're too partisan. You want us all to get along, or we're not partisan enough, or what?
I think that when we look at, as you define what progressive is, we definitely don't want regressive politics, that's for sure, which means we need to move forward, or we need to do something about the problems that we have. When we think of what conservative means, that means do we want to set where we are, in my mind, not necessarily do we want to have a change of ideas. I think the problem we have in today's worlds that we can address in our local political scene is the way in which we talk about the situational position Pueblo is in right now. When we think about Pueblo, we can't have other theories or other ideas about what's great in other places and just think that we can blanketly apply them here. I think that progressivism can be dangerous at the point that there's not a way that we check and look at the situation that we have in Pueblo to decide what type of progressivism is correct. I think that there's only one way to do certain things is flawed, and we need to be able to understand that when we talk about these issues that there's two sides to each issue. And though I may take a position on some sides, I'm always willing to listen to both sides because I think that that's what we need to do. I don't look at it as partisan issues. I look at it as issues that we face here in Pueblo. And so in this situation in Pueblo right now, even if you feel like that social programs or things that go to help the people in need or those with challenged mobility or people that are homeless, we have to look at Pueblo and realize that in our situation, these things are costing everybody money, from income, from development, from how much we're paying from the city to nonprofit agencies. And so we need to address the situation as a whole and realize that it shouldn't be a partisan issue. We got to do what's best for Pueblo.
There's two things interesting that I thought you said. I agree with your definition of conservative. Status quo, keep things the same. Liberal is change things, and aren't there just for everything? There's some things that are working, so you want to keep, and the things that aren't working, you want to change. So progress just means to keep moving forward. So you're right, what I think is progressive, for instance, a lot of my left-leaning friends hate those machines at Walmart where you can check it out yourself because we're losing jobs and we need to protect these jobs. I feel like technology is winning. So, let's use technology to quit doing these, these sort of dumb jobs that the robots can take care of themselves. So where they would say progressive is to protect a job, I would say it's progressive to use technology to, make our lives easier. Okay. What's your definition of progressive?
I think that progressive means that we move ahead with better ideas based upon learning from the experiences we have in the past.
I feel like it's so hard to argue being progressive because shouldn't you always move forward? I feel like the only time maybe you should go backwards is if you've gone the wrong path. But I feel like if you have to go turn around, you shouldn't go backwards. You should turn around and move forward back to where you came from. So that would be, progressive, like to always move forward.
Back is moving forward.
If you've gone the wrong direction, right? If I'm going to Canada and I took off to go to Mexico, I probably should turn right around as soon as I can. Okay, some fun questions are you a cowboy?
My parents own a ranch. I used to be I've been around horses and the ranch and things like that. I consider myself more Indian than I would cowboy, and so.
Did you ever ride horses around?
I know how to hunt and fish. I know how to saddle horses. I've watched people break horses. I've had to deal with calves.
You ever done city slickers, a run with cows across the states? Any of that?
No, none of that. My parents do have a chuck wagon though, so we've cooked a lot of meals from the chuck wagon for a lot of people.
You wear a cowboy hat, so what's...
It's more of an Indian hat.
All right, okay, so you're more of an Indian. What, wait, you're very white, so how are you Indian?
Just That's a historical thing.
Or pink. You're peachish.
You're talking about amalgamation. Actually, I'm a little bit darker than you might think that I am. But that's amalgamation.
You have blue eyes.
Huh?
Malcolm X
might be true
would call you the blue-eyed devil.
Right. I think it's all about the soul. It's about the culture. It's about your way of thinking. It's about your way of approaching the world. It's about your way of understanding the world.
I feel you.
And understanding your place in the world. And so, yeah, amalgamation can take over as far as being white, things like that, your skin color. But that's why we've got to try to understand. You know, for me, that's what I think is unique to me is I have an understanding of the different cultures that we have here in Pueblo. I have an understanding of what it's like to be poor. And I know in that instance, my idea isn't to take all the rich people's money and give it to the poor like Robin Hood, but my idea is that we need to make everybody a well-rounded city where everybody has opportunity.
Okay. I feel like the rich deserve a seat at the table just like anybody else, but they're the only ones at the table and they're the only ones eating. So.
Well, that's you know, I think people that work hard and do a lot to accrue what they have, I think you have to respect that in a sense. And so I'm not, you know, in any way want to disrespect that. I feel like that they
I think there's a medium, there's a middle ground here. So let's imagine we have a big banquet and the 100 billionaires of this town are eating all that they can eat, and they've stuffed themselves, and they fed all of them, and they fed their families, and they fed everything else, and there's still 90% of the food is still left on the table. Shouldn't they should they take that food home, or should they, you know, share that food that they don't have no business with
you know, honestly,
others?
I think most of the people of Pueblo would share. I think that the problems we have in Pueblo right now have to do with the lack of creative policies, and also just the way in which city government is set up, and the way in which we've worked under a city manager method for so many years.
What about, we haven't had a homeless shelter here for what, decades? 2 decades? Never? Has there ever been a homeless shelter in Pueblo City?
Well, apparently there's been some sort of homeless shelter in various times throughout Pueblo. I think that a
government-owned, a Pueblo City-owned government building that they went to, or some non-profit warehouse that they stuck them into?
Mostly non-profit organizations, is my understanding. And so that comes back to, are we willing to make the commitment that's going to save us money? And now it's in the short term. I mean, if you look at, here's how things work right now with the homeless issue. We take the homeless people, we put them in our jail system. That means that costs so much. Does it cost less per day to build a homeless shelter and put people in homeless shelters, or more to put them in an incarceration system? Also, it snowballs. Once they get in the incarceration system, they become statistics. Once they become statistics, we make the top 9 most violent cities in the country. And that's kind of the problem in the way in which we are not dealing with these issues. Snowballs into making the image of Pueblo look bad. And that's one really good example. If you were to go, oh, well, we have 500 out of 800 people in the prison system were homeless before they went to the county jail. That's a problem, especially when statistics then report that Pueblo is one of the most violent.
It's actually a conservative argument that you're saying you're going to save money by giving a damn. So that's what it feels to me. If you're asking me what the reason was, people just don't want to give a damn. They just don't want to care. It's like, wait, buy them, get them something for free. I had to work all my life. And that's, you know, probably true, but it's cheaper. It's cheaper, so it's conservative to, you know, or conservative in our money, in our pocketbooks.
Yes.
It's changed, so it's liberal, but it's conservative to save money.
And right now, the city, and also the way in which these statistics are hampering our city. When people read about our city, industries won't come here.
Sure.
A lot of people that want to move here, move away from here. People that drive through town, people that drive through the city want to pass through Pueblo and go to Colorado Springs. And I'll be honest, I'd rather be in Pueblo any day than Colorado Springs.
Yeah, me too.
I feel much safer in Pueblo than Colorado Springs.
Too. Yeah, sure.
But that's not what statistics say. And that's because we're taking homeless people and they're becoming criminal statistics along with the homeless statistics.
Well, there's another thing that I don't like, that a lot of marijuana legalization reactionaries want to say, well, look at the homeless, look at all the drug problems that we have now because you have an influx of marijuana migrants. But I guess my response to that was, oh, so there wasn't homeless here before marijuana was legalized. There was no drug problem. The drugs were clear. Nobody was doing any drugs until marijuana was legalized.
I think this I think this is an example of people looking for root cause analysis. I know one group likes to say that it's the utilities that cause lots of homelessness. Another one, I think
they've already made the conclusion. Marijuana is the devil.
If you look at the study about marijuana causing homelessness, I think they interviewed 50 homeless people. They said they came here for marijuana, but let's take that a little bit further. When people come here for marijuana, also people don't want to be under a system to where what they're doing for medical issues is illegal. Now they can leave that. They can leave looking over their shoulder wondering if they're going to go to jail for dealing with their own medical issues. They get to Pueblo, and what do they find? A city that's it's really awesome. It's a big city with a small town feel. It's very attractive. They get here and they go, wow, there's really no jobs here, are there? And so then when there's no jobs, then it becomes, whoa, right now the housing availability is really weird. We have all these vacant houses, but yet there's no affordable housing for middle class people here. So then you have people driving around in their cars, sleeping on the streets at night, looking for a place to stay, to spend the night. Not because they came here and cannabis caused that. Cannabis did not cause a lack of jobs in Pueblo. Actually, that could be the solution to a lack of jobs in Pueblo, but studies like this won't get their heads out of the sand and actually try to, move forward and try to actually capitalize on our situation because they want to keep holding us back.
It seems very myopic just to blame marijuana. The other study that was doing all the homeless people in jails, they had said that they were running away from a problem or that they had family here too. So there was 3 major reasons why you had an influx of homeless people. And ultimately, let me throw this idea at you and see what you think about it. It just feels like you're not ready for new people. You're not ready for new people. Of course there's going to be influx. There's going to be more people coming in here because marijuana is legal. Of course that's going to happen. But you're also going to have children, and then your children's going to have children, and they're going to need jobs, and they're going to need places to stay. They're going to need homes, and so we're not even. I feel like it's just we're not planning for the future. We're not planning on more people coming here, and now people are coming here. Now people are freaking out. But I feel like if you had been ready for your own kids and your own grandkids, then the few thousand people that come into town, that's 107,000 people here anyway. So it's a big city, or fairly a big small city. So, yeah, what do you think about that? People just aren't ready for their own children, so when they have all these marijuana migrants coming in, they're not ready for anybody. They're not ready for new people, old people, they're just not ready.
I think that the city has a lot of potential. I think that after the collapse of the steel industry in 85 and 90, I guess when CF and I went bankrupt, that there's been a power grab for the wealth in this city, it feels like. And at that point, a lot of people are not very willing to let go of their personal funds, and I feel like the city government is keeping their money really tight. And in some sense you can't blame them, but there has to be creative ideas. Just as we say people are coming to town as marijuana migrants, we should be able to create an industry from cannabis, from marijuana, from either the tools that are used to make it, the tools that are used to harvest it, the tools in which it's being produced. Like they still use regular chicken wire when they harvest it. There's no gloves that are specially made for harvesting.
You could have the homeless, you could have municipal marijuana and have the homeless run that with a cop present. And then it would pay for itself. So instead of, you wouldn't even be wasting any money, you'd be making money. You'd be setting a business up.
There's many ways that we could move forward.
I got a list here. Let me go down each one, and then you just kind of say yes or no, and then we'll go back and expand on any of the ones you want to expand on. You ready? Okay, so you believe in instant runoff voting.
Yes.
Should be the way that we elect the mayor, county commissioners, governor, everybody.
Well, I can only speak for city offices, but yes.
Okay. Right, so you're against the current 2-round Kyrgyzstan cutthroat election, and you're against just a simple majority take-all, but you want the perfect democracy known as instant runoff voting?
Correct.
Okay. Let's see, trash crisis. You had mentioned you wanted rotating dumpsters and maybe just have a guy in a pickup truck to go around picking up couches and whatever.
I think, yeah, there's a few ways that you can do that. My idea originally is that in the first 120 days, we get dumpsters out on the street and let people throw their trash away.
120? People usually judge the 100 days. It's a nice round number.
I'm going to add another 20.
They're going to judge it. They judged FDR in his first 100 days.
I know. That's why I'm going to add another 20.
You need a buffer.
Yep.
Well, you should try to get shit done in 90 days. Sorry. Okay. City lift services. You want to increase city lift services?
I think that the times that they're available right now is not convenient for many people that have, first of all, if they have children that need to use those services, for people that use those services and have children, I think that the times need to be later. I also think we need to open it up and be available on Sundays and on holidays, because you have a lot of old people that spend their time at home alone because they have no way to access services. If you use the sidewalks in Pueblo, then you really know we need city lift services, because nobody can go anywhere if they're in a wheelchair or a rascal. Ask Ayana, as she's telling you right now, when we try to ride around town in her little buggy. It's devastating.
She's singing. I thought she was crying. She's singing. Okay, yes, then. Increase city lift services.
Yes.
Bus services. You want to increase bus services?
We need to make the time longer and open them up earlier.
Would you use tax-liened houses to help alleviate poverty?
I think that we should we should figure out a way to resolve a lot of these housing issues that we have here. I love to keep and save old buildings. I like old brick. I think Pueblo has a lot of old brick here. I think we need to save that, and if we can put people in transitional housing that way, I think that's a great idea.
Use non-biased software for better, more fair, more judicious, more diplomatic contractor picks.
Correct. An example recently is to tear down a house. We hired one company out of Denver that's a larger, I would almost say a multinational company versus a company out of Colorado Springs. The company in Denver underbid the company out of Colorado Springs. There's been studies that say that if we were to use more local companies that hire more local people, that's actually long-term we would save or put back into the economy whatever money that other company underbid.
What kind of what do you expect out of companies that are working for the city?
I expect them to do the job, like for example,
minimum wage, green. Do they have to do that, or
I
just,
think that we
just
need.
clean?
I think
they
we
just
need
to
to
be clean.
No, I think we need to look at which companies who hire and what backgrounds they have, what
minorities,
reputations
whether or
they
not
have.
they're hiring
right.
women and
also,
minorities.
I think we need to look and see, can we do something to help Pueblo when we do when we engage in these contracts, like hiring a company that's not going to pay anybody in Pueblo $1 and we're going to pay all that money out to them does not make sense, and that's kind of why. The people that created the half-cent sales tax, they were genius. It's just the people following it, coming up with ideas, haven't really been able to fulfill that.
Can we try yes and no for each one of these?
Go.
Okay. You want to implement a waste? Do you want to implement a waste to electricity
yes.
kind of model for the trash? Do you want? Are you pro-municipal electricity?
Yes.
Do you want to reduce the number of executive sessions?
Yes.
Are you for community police stations?
Yes.
Are you for a citizens complaint board?
Yes.
Do you want to enforce the ethics laws already on the books?
Correct. Yes.
VOTECH. You're big into VOTECH, the strategic creation of job skills and skilled workforce.
Yes.
You support small business and small industry and small and startup companies.
Yes.
You want to maintain the small town charm of Pueblo City?
Nah, man, we should be uncharmed. Yes, I like that one, actually.
Well, I feel like there's two directions you can go. You can either make it sort of like a happy valley where we all got a little bit of space,
I think we need,
or we can just start getting the towers and just have these big giant towers that has all the things.
We need to keep the red brick and mortar.
I like the agrarian rural feel. Let's see, where am I at? Muny, Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Fiber optics, if we can get a hold of the fiber optics,
yes.
apparently under our city. Ombudsman.
Yes.
Build a government-owned homeless shelter.
Yes.
Just one?
Probably more than one.
You said something about segregating the veterans and the families and the drug.
The issue is we need to diversify them. That way people that
Let's come back to
get
that.
lumped in, we'll come back to that one.
Pass an Employee Free Choice Act for the city.
Sure. Yes.
It makes unionization easier, so it gives the vote. It allows every workers in every company to vote whether they want a union or not, so they can vote it down too. You want to paint the city with bright, happy colors?
Yes.
You'll allow the city unions to strike?
Yes.
You'll hire grant writers to aggressively go after every single grant available?
Yes.
You'll lift the ban on sunflowers? and dandelions.
I'll have to check on dandelions.
But sunflowers gets a pass.
Yes.
Will you add poison ivy, sumac, hemlock, and oak to the ban list?
Those should probably be banned.
It's got poison in their name. Yeah. The protect the marijuana industry.
Yes.
More. You want more solar-powered city lights everywhere?
Why didn't we do that in the first place?
I don't know. It's free, so we need to stay on the grid so we can pay our lobbyists, our corporate lobbyists. I don't know. More bike lanes everywhere.
Yes.
Pass a law making it illegal to waste good food.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a law. I think we need something to encourage it, but that's kind of the idea. Ordinances that encourage.
I think you gotta pass a law.
Not
pass a law. That's how you're gonna feed them in the homeless shelter. And that's it. The other candidates, do you like any of the other candidates that you could see working with them, maybe as a part of your cabinet, maybe as a department head?
Probably.
Anyone you want to mention?
But I'm not for sure yet. You know.
Okay.
I think it'll see. We'll see how people, the demeanor of the candidates during the election.
The government-owned homeless shelter. We were getting into the, I guess, more specifics of it.
Yeah, the problem with our homeless shelter approach right now is we're trying to lump all the homeless people into one group. And then you have people that are saying, not in my backyard. And you don't blame people for not wanting drug addicts in their backyard or
I want the homeless shelters out in the outskirts of town.
Not wanting it near schools. I understand that. But if we can diversify the shelters and say, have a shelter for veterans, have a shelter for people with families, have a shelter for women's shelter to protect women and children. There's different ways. We could also have a shelter that's for the mentally ill. That way they can get their treatment there that the mentally ill need. If we want to help with the current program that the county just approved, I think it's called LEAP, where people can come in and go into that program if they want to. But I think that once we establish the different diverse homeless shelters, then you can look and say, those people that don't want to be in those shelters are probably the ones that you don't want in your backyard.
Yeah.
I want to follow that up and say, right now, it's in my backyard. And so, I respect the NIMBY argument, but at the same time, when you choose not to have them in your backyard, they're always in somebody else.
I think segregating them makes sense from mental health and the druggies, because what if you just have a family out in their luck? We're all about, 2 weeks, 2 paychecks from homelessness anyways. So you have a homeless family that's just, down on their luck. You're going to put them in the cage or in a small area with a bunch of druggies and mental people?
No, and that's why you need a diverse homeless shelter. You also need a campground. You need a parking lot for homeless people.
Let's assume you're the mayor right now. There's 2,000 homeless people in this city. Would you be open to the idea of having an acre out in the outskirts of town, but that the city had purchased, for all of them to just go there and just set up, and they're allowed to be there? Because the biggest thing with homeless people is they don't have no place to go. So if they're allowed to go to a place,
and then we create,
and that they know that it's a safe place. Because a lot of people will probably be nervous until eventually, they'll slowly.
And that feeds into the whole. There's this idea called our notion of fear of crime. Okay, and that's when you have neighborhoods and you have people in neighborhoods that live in fear of crime. They live in fear for their safety.
Yeah, sure.
They live in fear of their possessions.
Yeah.
And so when you have people that have no place to go and say they park on the street in front of your house at night because they have no place to go, then you start getting scared. Many people then go arm themselves. Well, that's not a good reason to arm yourself if somebody's just trying to find a safe place to park.
Right.
But then you arm yourself. Then your children find the gun. Then somebody gets shot. And it all happens because we didn't have a safe place for people to go to while they try to find a safe place. They make other people scared. Then you create this massive cycle of violence. Another thing that I know we didn't talk about that we need to address in Pueblo is we definitely need to address gun violence in some way. I think that that's something that we need to, that we need to figure out how can we decrease access to guns for those people that shouldn't have them. Like half of the people engaged with violent gunfire with the police officers were actually on probation and shouldn't have guns is one example.
How many homicides so far?
And then suicide is another thing I think we need to address in Pueblo. That's a big issue that I don't know that a lot of people talk about, but we need to actually maybe even have a task force that really deals with that in Pueblo, because that's a problem right now in our city.
There's 35 adults were killed themselves last year, and about a dozen teenagers killed themselves last year. Did you hear about that 18-year-old Joseph Angela Lawler who shot and killed a 28-year-old Isaac Hughes, yesterday or today.
No.
It was in the 1700 block of East 4th Street about 8 p.m. And this was right after there was another shooting earlier in the day. So this 18-year-old Joseph Lawler just turned himself in. And then it said he drove up to the victim's home on 4th Street with other individuals in his vehicle and then opened fire at Hughes. And they said that they believed they knew each other and it was sparked over a third-party relationship, so over, I guess, a woman. 3 hours before the shooting, he's now facing first-degree murder charges, the 18-year-old. Just 3 hours before the shooting, another shooting occurred on the 1500 block of East Evans Street just after 4:30 p.m. 37-year-old Josh. So yeah, so there's homicides, there's gun violence. So what would you say all the crises? What are the biggest crises for Pueblo? Could you list like the top 10, top 5, or just the biggest ones in your mind?
I think that
because there's a bunch. There's a trash crisis. There's a heroin. I don't know if there's a drug crisis, but a heroin needle crisis. I feel like I probably could, just if they're doing cocaine or whatever. But if they're leaving heroin needles all over the place.
More needles around my house and in my alley than I've seen in my whole life before.
There's a housing shelter for the homeless crisis. There's a crime crisis. So
I think that I want to go back and I want to go back and talk about. I think there's a couple of things. One, I think, is I want to go back. I push for ethics and transparency in government.
Yeah.
I feel like that there's ways in which, and also a more easier, accessible government, a more simple government. And so I feel like that's one way that we can actually save the city money. But also I think that we need to start economic gardening. We need to start creating a workforce that can either A, attract industry, or B, support industry. And so in Pueblo, in Pueblo, we need to think about the future, the children, the grandchildren. And so to do that, we need a long-term plan. We need a 20-year plan. And if nobody has a plan that's like a 20-year plan, then they're not really going to help Pueblo. We need to think about what are the businesses of the future that we can access here. I hear Gratisar talk about how one thing great about Pueblo is we have lots of water, lots of access to water. I think the cannabis industry is going to be huge here in Pueblo, especially because of that access to water. Now, how are we actually going to help the city make money from that, or are we going to watch other places do that? We are, I guess, industrious here in Pueblo. We can do things like create what might be called a bud glove. We can do things like create inverters for solar technology. We can create armored cable wire. We can create new types of solar panels and things that can fit on houses that can use and not allow income inequality to determine who actually gets the access to green technology.
Did you hear about Sal Pace declaring a moratorium on licenses for 2 years?
What kind of license?
Grower's license, retail license, no new marijuana for 2 more years. Mr. Marijuana is banning any new marijuana from coming in.
And see, and
and how many licenses have we given out? I know the city has, 8 retail shops, and the county has maybe, 8 also?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
I don't see marijuana, is what I guess I'm saying. It's probably marijuana sales are just as plentiful as solar panels. It's like 1% of the population is really benefiting off of it. I don't see marijuana in yards. I don't see marijuana in the countryside. I just don't see this being. Well, I just thought it'd be everywhere. Marijuana gardens everywhere, and I would like that to be an accepting culture. I feel like we're still.
Our city doesn't encourage it, I think like Eugene, Oregon, for example, that's a city I feel like has embraced the cannabis culture, and now it's a happy city there. You go there, they have the same issues we have here, but it's a happy city because people aren't fighting against each other because they know that they're going to figure out how to grow with this. In Pueblo, it just doesn't seem like it's a happy city right now.
Well, suicides, why is that happening? Why are people killing themselves? In the marijuana city, why are people killing themselves? There's marijuana everywhere.
Generational poverty, struggles.
You would, a policy thing, you would be okay with 6 to 12 plants per household, the state law, you would keep that in place, or would you expand it, or what?
I think that
would be your
I would do whatever
policy.
I could do to allow cannabis to be utilized. Obviously, I think I got to support it being regulated in a way. You know, or we
Well, I'm just wondering if you're okay with the current regulations that the state has handed down, and the way I understand it is that 6 plants per person and 12 maximum. So really, if you just one person can have 6 plants. Any more than 2 people in a household, they can have 12, and that's it.
I mean, I haven't found any reason to feel like you need more than that. Yeah.
It used to be 99.
And so
I was pissed off. I come in here and it was 99, and I was like, God,
someone
Colorado
comes
is
to
going
me
to
and
thump.
says we can change this in Pueblo, and this is what we want to change it to, and gives me good reasons. Then, you know, and I'm not going to sound like, oh, I'll go either way. I just think that, you know, there's limits and there's no limits and there's limits, and if we're going to have limits, then.
Will you be in support of the city police in prosecuting those who steal other people's marijuana plants as if that was private property with anybody else? Is that anything we would even have to worry about under a Massey administration?
Man, I don't know. I don't think you should steal other people's stuff.
I'm against stealing too, but I guess I just don't know where the policy is and where the government would feel, and I wonder if they would just laugh at you. I was like, hey, they stole my marijuana plants. Oh, you shouldn't have planted. What do you mean? That's stealing. So that means you need to write this down, report it, and we need to stop these people from taking.
I know it happens a lot whenever it's unregulated.
Yeah, well, actually, that's the thing is gangsters rob each other, and they say, "What are you going to do? You know, go to the police?" No. So now it's it's in the underground, and now you got to do some underground stuff. Anything else that you want to mention?
I'm sure we'll have this talk again.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. All right, it's Jackie Massey. Peace.